Hello everyone, it's Sue Jerome here again, and I am doing my second episode of Life with a Purpose. And today I'm going to talk about my family. And the first one I want to talk about is my dad. Now, my dad, as far as I know, he was the youngest of 8 siblings, and he was a little bit spoilt by his sisters. But he did also have a bit of a hard life. He didn't have a very good relationship with his dad, but he had a reasonable relationship with his mum. And he loved to play sports. I found out that he played for the church soccer at Lidcombe, and they wanted the kids to go to church who wanted to play for the Presbyterian church soccer. So he did. So he got to know a little bit about God, but he wasn't really interested. And I suppose as soon as he was old enough, he stopped going to church there. And it was a bit tough. I mean, my dad was born in 1930, and I think it was, the late 30s, 1940s that he really grew up and started to in life and things like that. So that's all I really know of my dad. I know he loved his brother George, Uncle George, and they got on really well, and all the family got on really well. And sad to say, I never met my dad's dad. He passed away before Mum and Dad got married. And I never met my dad's mum either, Christina. She passed away not long after Mum and Dad got married. But Dad was very active. He loved soccer, as I said, and he also played cricket. And he just was a young man just getting on with life. And that's about all I know about my dad. So now I'm going to talk about my mum. I know a little bit more about my mum. And I've got some photos here, and the top right photo is of my mum and her brother Jeff. And the story that I know about my mum's life is that she thought she was the eldest of her family, or at least I did. But then I found out after my grandmother passed away that she actually had a half-brother, that before my grandmother got married to my grandfather, she had a child out of wedlock. And but fortunately for him, my grandmother's mother adopted him as their son, and they called him Ray, and he was a part of their family. And then my grandmother met my grandfather, and they got married, and they had another child called Robert. And everything was going fine. I think he was born in 1928, and everything was going fine. But then when he was about 21 months old, he got diphtheria, and sadly the doctor didn't get to him on time, and he passed away. And I think he passed away in 1931. And then in about 4 or 5 years later, or maybe 3, I'm not sure, my mum was born in 1934. And so they were all excited and probably nervous as well about having another child and that, because they were really grieving about Robert, but they were happy to have another child. And Margaret grew up as a very loving girl, and then they had another baby called Jeff. He was born about 5 years after her, and they had 2 children now. And they had a good life as well, as best as they could in the 1930s and 1940s. And then the next picture is of my grandmother and my mum. I don't know how old she was there, but they must have gone out for the day and just sort of, they got were close together. They'd go to the city, they'd go and see Auntie Jess, and then I think also Mum said that she played a lot of tennis up until she could. Although, sorry, I'm going back a bit. When my mum was about 7 or 8, I found out that she actually got scarlet fever, and she had to go to the hospital in the Royal Alfred Hospital in Sydney, and she had to stay there for a few days or a week to see what had happened, because a lot of people don't know, but scarlet fever was quite fatal back then, and a lot of children could actually die from it, and they did. But Mum was blessed because the Lord was looking after her, and she was finally able to come home, but she found out she had AF, which is a heart problem, and she's lived with that for a long time. And then, so when they found that out, she was had to be very careful of what she did and everything like that. She wasn't really allowed to play much sport or whatever. But then she said to me, when she turned 13, she was going to Parramatta High up the road, and she suddenly was told, yes, you can play any sport you want. So that was it. She went and she played tennis, and she just loved every sport. Whatever sport was going at school, she loved. She was very active. And I mean, back in the day when she went to school, she told me she had to wear a hat and gloves. She had to wear all the fancy stuff. Like, they had the uniform, but they had to have hats and gloves as well. And I mean, can you imagine in the heat? It would be so hot, but they bore with it anyway. And then she just grew up in the family, and she loved to socialise and things like that. And then, of course, Mum and Dad got married, and then down in the bottom corner you see 3 ladies and a baby. Well, that's 4 generations there. It's actually my brother after he was born. That's 4 generations. That was my mother's grandmother, and her mother was on the other side, and Mum and my brother Greg were in the middle. And then this picture on the right-hand side was another one where she got older after she married Dad, and then, of course, this is one of her latest ones as well. But I mean, Mum had a reasonably good life. I mean, there was a lot of ups and downs. We didn't know it at the time, but when it was my grandmother's birthday, she'd be down and depressed, my grandmother. And then I found out years later that it was because she remembered she actually lost Robert probably 5 days after her birthday. So that was a sad memory for her every year, to knowing that they had to bury their baby. Anyway, so that's as much as I know about Mum before she met Dad. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about Mum and Dad and how they met. And this is quite a bit of a lovely story, but a funny story at the same time. So Mum, as I said, Mum loved playing tennis all the time, and she loved to be active and things like that. So one day, I think Mum was at tennis club, and Dad, with a couple of his friends, came over to the tennis club to play tennis. And then some people, well, actually, I think Mum said Dad went back and told his sisters about how he met this girl, and she's so pretty and I really like her. And so they encouraged him and said, well, go and ask her out and stuff like that. So he did. And I mean, back in the day when they asked them out, they went on a picnic. That was the thing back in the day. And so what they did was they went out for a picnic, and then they went home, and then they went out again. And I think by this time my dad was getting to know Mum's parents. And so then they started forming a bond. And it sounded really good because I actually thought Mum met Dad at church, but he didn't. She didn't. She met him at tennis club, which wasn't too bad because back in the day also they had a lot of clubs that they would go to and they loved playing tennis. So then Mum reminded me that I think in 1956 Dad came over to visit Mum, and it was just after he found out his dad had passed away. And it was just strange to Mum because Dad didn't really show a lot of emotion growing up or getting to know her. He might laugh or giggle a bit, but when he said that, when he went to see Mum, he said, he's gone. And it was like really, really sad way, but glad way at the same time. So that sort of said to Mum maybe he didn't have a good relationship with his dad in the end. Because as I said, he was the baby of the family, so his dad might have been quite old at the time too. So, that's really about how they all met, but they both met. But it was just, I just wanted to share that to show you where Mum and Dad came from and what sort of people they were, and how the Lord had brought them together, whether they thought so or not. And of course, too, back in the day, too, Mum said that when they were going to get married, Mum dragged Dad to the pre-marriage talk with the pastor, and she said he sat there with his arms folded, listened to everything, and that was about it. But at least he went, so I can thank the Lord for that. So I just wanted to show you sort of what kind of parents they were when we came along. So now I'm going to talk about my brother. Talk about our house, sorry. Sort of to say that my brother was actually born before they started building the house, and they used to live in a little one-bedroom bed-sitter, which is where you have a double bed at one end, like what you would call a granny flat or something like that on the front of somebody's house. And so when they got married, they had Greg, and then they lived there. And then they decided they needed to build a house, and they got some property over in Borkham Hills. So while they were living there, I think Mum fell pregnant with me, because my brother is about two and a bit years older than I am. So Mum fell pregnant with me while she was over in Dundas. They were over in Dundas. And but at this time they were building this house, and the one slide on the right is where it is, the house on the right, which is completed before they started planting things and that. But what I want to say about the house is my father had siblings that were carpenters. They were, I think someone was doing the bathrooms. And so basically my dad built the house with his brothers. I mean, they still had to have, the checks for the house, the building inspections and things like that. But basically they were owner builders, and they were able to build their own house. And that was really, it's not much heard of today, but back then it was a big deal to be owner builders. So, and then on the right, the picture shows all the trees and everything out the front of our house. And the room on the right was our lounge room. And there's a room behind all those trees. That was my bedroom in the front. And the window you can see on the other side was Mum and Dad's room. And my brother had a room in the back. So this was a big deal, this house. It was beautiful. And it was in a quiet area. And all the kids used to play out on the street, and we'd stay out late and come back at dinner time. And that was the normal back then. because it was quiet and wasn't as busy as it is today. So, and that's where my brother and I and my sister grew up. So now I'm going to talk about my brother. And yeah, the picture with all the people on the left, if you can look closely, you can see my brother in the corner. They were trying to include him in the photo with me, but I think he was too interested in the book because he loved to read books. And he was a quiet young lad, actually, but very caring. As you can see in the next photo, that's him on the trike, which I could never ride anyway, but that was the closest thing I got to the trike, and that was me. And as you can see, I've got the arm on my left side. But yeah, that was in our backyard, so there wasn't really much, but we had the fences and everything. And then the next photo is you see my brother standing tall, and then me on the right-hand side and my little sister on the left. So that was Debbie. And we seemed to all get on, we just, we had our times, we fought. I got on well with my sister. Sometimes I got on well with my brother, but we also fought. So, it's typical family back in the day. This was now in the 50s, 60s. And then, of course, down the bottom there's my mum's mum and dad and my brother in his scout uniform, me in the middle and Debbie at the end. And I think Dad took that photo. But you can see our fashion. We had really short skirts back then too, which was good. I like that. But only because it helped me to be able to use my legs a lot freer. Anyway, so going on to my brother, that's my brother, Greg, who I just took a photo of him. I had that one up there because he had lovely long hair. And then, of course, down the bottom, that's another one with Greg and myself. We had gone out somewhere with some friends. So he was a good brother. He looked after me. I mean, as I said, we fought, but our fights weren't verbal. They were actually physical. I used to go into his room and we used to start kicking and punching and fighting, and then it got harder and harder. And I think one time he must have hit me so hard that I got off the bed and I go, "Mum, he kicked me, he hit me. And then sort of he didn't like me after that for a little while. But I was just that little annoying sister that always annoyed the big brother. So he was a nice young man, but he had his hard times as well. I mean, he was asked how he felt about me being disabled, but he didn't. Mum never found out what he said, and I asked him later in life what he thought, and he just couldn't say anything. He just said, "Yeah, it was just part of my life. That's all." So, but I loved my brother until, of course, he got married and he left, and I was there with my sister. And but then not long after, my sister left as well because she wanted to start nursing. So I was left at home by myself. So it was good, but I, was a bit upset about that. But anyway, so these are the pictures of my sister. I apologise for some of the photos that I've taken, but in the top right corner was that swing my sister and I used to share, and you can't see it in that one, but we were both wearing the same outfit. But as you can see in the next one, in front of our Holden, our white Holden that Dad had, we had a lot of adventures in that one, and we didn't have seat belts in the back seat, so we'd be sliding around as we go around corners. It was quite fun. Anyway, but as you can see, my sister and I were pretty much dressed the same. My mum used to love, used to make things the same. She'd get enough wool for both and stuff. And then on the end one there is us on holidays with my cousin and my brother in the background. And that was our holiday house. We could go there. It was just like a big double garage, but we were able to stay there, and then we could walk down to the beach. So it was really fun there. And of course, well, that's my wedding on the side, but I'll talk about that later. But and then of course that's Debbie in the middle, Greg on the right, and me on the left on the middle bottom. And yeah, it was hard. I missed them, and it was hard, but it was good being at home on my own as well. And then of course this is Debbie down the bottom near me. She's on the left-hand side with the dog in front. That's her dog Billy. And we sort of get on and off. We've got to be careful what I say to her, but she was a great sister, and we played a lot together until we fought, and then we'd be separate, and then we'd play again. But yeah, she was a really good sister until times, as I explained, I had jealousy for a long time. And when I went to visit her last time, the Lord said to me, just let her talk. Anyway, it just so happened that she remembers when Dad came home from work when we were little, and she must have got to Dad first, and he picked her up, and then he put her down, but he didn't pick me up, and I think that's when jealousy came in. And I go, thank you, Lord, that's where jealousy came in. I understand that. So I just want to thank the Lord that, through my sister, that I'm learning some more things. So, but yeah, I love Debbie, and well, I don't know if she loved me, but, and then of course I became a Christian. So we sort of parted a little bit in that regards. She didn't like Christianity. She didn't like the Lord too much. She didn't understand him because she's very intellectual, and so is my brother. So, but I take my hat off to Debbie for becoming a nurse. She loved being a nurse, and it was sort of a blessing to have her as my sister. So next thing, I've got a few photos of myself, but I've also got my dog Goldie. On the right-hand side, you can see me sitting with two Chrissy dolls on me and my dog Goldie in the front. And that was my way of holding her and patting her. And she was a beautiful dog, even though she was my brother's dog. She was a beautiful dog. And I was sitting just in front of a makeshift pen of our guinea pigs. So we had 3 guinea pigs, 1 each. My brother had Pedro, I had Tassie, and Debbie had Tessie. Now we called mine Tassie because I had A in my name, and we called Debbie's Tessie because she had E in her name. So, and Pedro, I don't know why we called Pedro, but we did. So, but yeah, we're blessed with the Chrissy dolls. They were like a Barbie doll, but a bigger version of Chrissy. And we could lengthen her hair or we could make it short, but we had all these different outfits. I don't know why I was holding them there, but I was just showing them to get a photo, I guess. And that was also probably the same day when I was lying on the grass afterwards, and I looked up and I said, Lord, I know you're up there. I'd really like to hear you speak to me. And so that's what I did. I eventually found out that I could hear the Lord. Anyway, but that comes later on. But the one in the picture in front of the Holden there, that was me getting ready to go to school. That was my famous jumper that Mum knit me that was so big, but it was so warm. In fact, it was so big I could wear it until my early teens. It was really good. So, yeah, Mum really did look after me, and she was my support system. And that one little baby down the bottom smiling, that's me. Mum had gone round the corner and I was looking for her and I was going, where are you? And then when she came round, I go, and I get really happy because there she was, I found her. So anyway, also in these photos, I just wanted to show you how my dad was a part of my life, even though I didn't want to. I wanted him to be a different kind of father. But, the Lord was showing me today that I'm blessed to have the dad that I have. had, because he's passed away now, but he was a gentleman. He wasn't angry. He wasn't abusive. He loved his beer, and back in the day too, he could have a few cans of beer and drive and not get caught. But he was really gentle and kind to me, even though I didn't see that until now. And God gave me the best dad I could have. And I thank you, Lord, for that. And same with my mum. This photo on the end next to me is their 50th wedding anniversary photo. And they might not have gone on for years, for a while, but they became friends again. They just looked for each other. They talked a little bit, not always. But yeah, they were both gentle. Although sometimes Mum would ask Dad questions and Dad wouldn't answer, and she'd get angry because he wouldn't answer. I think it was because he couldn't hear it very well, but anyway. But they did love each other and respected each other, and I thank the Lord for the parents that I have. They were loving and kind in their own way, and and they were always there for us. My brother would play sport and my sister would play netball. I couldn't play, of course. I couldn't. Girls weren't allowed to play with the boys back then, soccer, and also couldn't play netball because of the short arms. But they were always there, and we'd always go out together, and Dad would take us on trips around New South Wales and Victoria and South Australia. But we were just a simple family. We had our arguments, as I said, and a lot of Sundays, because at that time we weren't going to church, we would have barbecues in the backyard on a makeshift barbecue that Dad made, of course. And but it was special. It was really good. And he just, cooked, Mum prepared and things like that. And we try and talk, but a lot of the time we didn't really know how to talk, but we were just a family together. And then, of course, my brother got married, and then, I think Debbie left first. She went to nursing school, and Greg got married. So, it was pretty sort of, growing up was quite easy. As I said, we would go out to visit our friends down the road, and we would walk to school and back again with the friends, and then we would just be a part of a community, and of course a lot of people would know me in the community because of my arms. But what I'm trying to bring out is that the Lord, my mum and dad were very strong in things as well. They stood together. They fought for me and my rights. I was able to they fought for me to go to school because I wasn't going to a disabled school. They didn't have them back in those days. I had to learn how to look after myself before I went to school. But Mum and Dad, they helped me. I mean, Mum was the helper, but when I felt angry or aggravated, I'd just sit with Dad and he'd just calm me down. He wouldn't say anything, but he just knew how to calm me down. And I just want to thank the Lord for my Mum and Dad, and how great that He blessed them to bless, and that I could be their daughter. It was such a privilege. So I hope that helps to give you some background into my life.